Esther mentioned that she saw an interview yesterday, right?
I heard it. It's on
You
the
heard an
radio.
interview on the radio. Was it the radio, not the TV? Okay.
Yeah, no, it's CBC Radio. The program is called As It Happens, and you can read.
So tell us what was said, and then we'll take it from there because I have an interesting idea about that.
Well, the question was, it was with Rabbi Wayne Allen. The question was, is lab-grown meat kosher?
If what is kosher?
Laboratory made meat.
Meat that you grow in the laboratory.
Like instead of off the animal, they're growing it in, in a laboratory with cells.
From cells. So basically what I understood that he said is that it is kosher if all the other conditions of kashrut are met in the process. And what he said was that decisions on kashrut would be made on what you can see with the naked eye. So since the cells are not, they're microscopic, then it is kosher.
Very good. So based on what Esther brought up, which was the radio interview about last night that she heard about an opinion by Rabbi Wayne Allen that laboratory meat would be considered kosher if all of the conditions were properly met. And I just want to start off by just telling, because a few more people joined, that it's going to be a short class today. I have a funeral at 10. I have to leave here like promptly to around 20 after or so. But next week we'll have a full class. It's just, I wanted to teach something. I think it's important. Based on that idea of laboratory meat, first of all, Wayne Allen, Rabbi Allen, is a scholar. He's an expert on many areas of halacha, and I respect him highly and his opinion. And I've asked him his opinion on a few things, and it's very interesting. His ideas are, if I were to consider him, and there's one other rabbi in the conservative, well, don't say conservative movement because he's not really that much part of it anymore. I mean, he was once the rabbi at Bet Tikva. I see him occasionally. We pass in the mornings on Shabbos morning because he davens at Or Chaim mostly now. And what I find is that not only he's an expert on halacha, but he really knows his stuff. He does his homework. He's one of the rabbis that I would say is a true expert on kashrut and halacha in Toronto. So with that said, one of the ideas that, and the reason I said that some of the stricter poskim, the stricter authorities may not agree with him on that, because I also learned a little bit about that. We touched upon it. And I could see already the difficulties and the challenges. One, they're going to come up with the issue is, what do you do about basar b'chalav, meat and milk together, which we've learned. Meat and milk together, you just said it is what you see with your eyes. So if you see with your eyes a petri dish, we'll call it, or a dish, or an aquarium, or a terrarium, or whatever it is, or lab-grown meats with lights, whatever you're doing to have laboratory-grown meats. For those of you that just joined, we're talking about the issue of laboratory-produced meats, and an interview that Esther heard yesterday about the fact that Rabbi Wayne Allen said that if all the halachic requirements were met, that it would be considered to be kosher. And that is very true. That Wayne Allen is a complete expert in halacha and kashrut. So going forward, what I want to say about that is that there's going to be a couple of problems with it. One of the problems is when I see, he said, it's what you see. I don't see an animal. So I can't boil a mother and its kid and the kid in the mother's milk because I don't see an animal. What I see is two dishes, one dish over here, one dish over there. So am I boiling the kid in the mother's milk? So basar b'challah becomes an issue. Second issue becomes the issue of davar chadash. Davar chadash means a new thing. You've created a new item. Is it even really meat? It is meat. So they would say rabbinically it's prohibited to eat it with dairy. Maybe together, lechatchila, to start with. You can't eat it together with cheese. They might say this is laboratory grown meat. It's the same as basar. We're going to stamp it as meat. But you ever heard of DE? You don't see it as often anymore. DE is dairy equipment. When you see a bag of potato chips, sometimes you see DE. That means there's no dairy in it. but it was made with equipment that once made dairy. So that was in the kashrut going back. We're going to learn it again next year. It's called like nut bar nut, which means the taste transfer from a secondary taste transfer. It's not the direct taste transfer. The taste transfer of dairy is coming through equipment, not of the actual intervention of dairy touching the product of the potato chips. So that means that you've created a new item. And that potato chip that has DE on it means you cannot eat it on the same plate together with a bologna sandwich, because that's eating something that was made in dairy equipment together with a bologna sandwich. But you don't have to wait after you eat a bologna sandwich to have those potato chips, because they're not considered mamash actual dairy. They're only made with dairy equipment. So you could, 3 minutes after you eat that bologna sandwich, eat those DE milchika potato chips. I didn't say dairy potato chips. If it says dairy, like sour cream and onion dairy chips, no. Don't go around saying Marshall said you can eat dairy chips after meat. I never said that.
Sour cream in it?
Maybe, but whatever it is, they still taste good, even though I'm not allowed to eat them. So the thing is when you take a DE, a dairy equipment product, you can have it right afterwards on another plate. You can have a bologna sandwich or a chicken leg, and then right after the chicken leg, then take the bowl of potato chips and put them in there. It's empty, but I wish it had potato chips. Put it in there and eat the potato chips right afterwards, because you're not really mixing meat and dairy. The same thing with meat. When you make meat, you've created it from nothing, from cells. They might say, well, because it's actually made from animal cells, it's going to be, maybe they'll say it's ME, meat equipment or something. Maybe they'll say you don't have to wait till eat afterwards dairy. You can have ice cream right afterwards. But I don't think the poskim on the strict side will ever say that. Why will they never say that right after you eat this fake meat, or let's call it, or this laboratory, it's not fake, it's real, it's laboratory created meat, which by the way is good for sustainability. We don't have to shecht animals. I'll eat a hamburger made out of a laboratory meat because probably the conditions will be better. It won't have to worry about avian flu disease and all these different things that we worry about mad cow disease. They can control all that. It might be even better. But
you have to check the animal in order to get the cells to grow the meat.
okay, but even still, with that said, if we're creating meat and we're making meat in the laboratory, that meat, whatever it is, the poskim are never going to say you can eat that meat, that artificially created meat, whatever, and then go ahead and eat dairy right after. Why won't they say it? Not from a halachic, they'll say it from a rabbinic stand, because they don't want you to come to raise your children to think eating dairy right after meat is okay. We do it all the time at Bubby's house. You know, we go to Bubby Ellie's house and we have ice cream right after, because they might forget that it was fake meat. Maybe they want to. Maybe they'll come to eat it right after. That's why they make gezeras. They make fences around rules to say we don't want you to in Bobov, in the area of Bobov, in around 13th Avenue in Borough Park. You will not go into a variety store there or a grocery store there and see bacon and cheese potato chips with a DE Heckscher symbol on it. You will in Toronto. In Toronto, you can go to No Frills and you can buy bacon flavored potato chips, right? And they say DE, dairy equipment on them, and they're kosher. And you can eat these bacon potato chips because they're simulated. They have shrimp flavored things. We have artificial crab. I buy it. We have with a Heckscher on it. It's nice. Pollock and whitefish, right? The problem
Polish.
is, it's what?
It's Polish.
It's Polish. Pollock and whitefish. It's Polish. Very good. You're on the ball today with your joke. The problem is that when you look at those products, they don't want their children to come to say, now they've developed a tom, they've developed a taste for eating fake crab. Maybe they're going to want to try the real thing. They're going to sneak on the subway to Manhattan and they're going to want to try real mamash bacon. I don't want them to do that. Don't give them the flavored bacon, even if it's simulated. If I give you fake shrimp, you might want to try real shrimp. So they're afraid of that. So they live in an insular community. But on those strictnesses, what I wanted to talk about just for the few minutes that we have was an interesting man. Rabbi Yeshaya Neuwirth. And I'm reading from some notes here for you, but I just want to share a couple things about Rabbi Neuwirth. So Rabbi Neuwirth was born in Berlin, in Germany, and his father, Aharon, served as the rabbi in different German communities. After Kristallnacht, he traveled to Belgium on the Kinder transport. It's fascinating, that whole railway system that they set up to save children. Some went to Shanghai, some went to England, some went to Belgium, But he was rejoined with his parents together in 1939. And where did they settle? They went to Holland and settled in Amsterdam in the Netherlands during the Second World War. And the family, they had to live in hiding. They were in hiding like a lot of families in Amsterdam, and they were supported by that whole Renaissance. So during this time, Rabbi Neuwirth had very little access to any kind of literature, especially rabbinic literature, apart from the volume of a popular work, which I've spoken about, called Mishnah Brura. Mishnah Brura deals with all of the Shabbos laws. So in 1946, he immigrated illegally to the then called Palestine and was detained at a camp before being released and traveling to Jerusalem. Now, who did he connect up with? Where did he study? He studied with a very famous rabbi who I've spoken about many, many times, Rav Shlomo Zalman Auerbach. Rabbi Shlomo Zalman Auerbach is probably the one rabbi, if I could meet, of course, I would have liked to meet them all, but he was truly, Rabbi Shlomo Zalman Auerbach would take up the arguments with Rav Moshe Feinstein. There were a lot of machlokim, and he would argue, machlokot rather, and he would argue, and they would have discussions, and they didn't agree, but they were very good friends. Well, Rabbi Neuwirth himself wrote a volume of books on his own about the hilchos and the laws of Shabbat. And they're very strict for the most part. And they were called the Shmirat Shabbat Kehilchata. You'll see them on some people's bookshelves. I wish I had a set. I'd like to get it. But the Shmirat Shabbos Kehilchata was published also in English and in Hebrew, and it discusses all the laws of Shabbos and Yom Tov. But it's viewed by a lot of different people as, of course, an authoritative work. But what happened was, as a student of Rav Shlomo Zalman Auerbach, who he himself argued with a great deal, the book generally follows the opinions of Rav Shlomo Zalman Auerbach. It usually goes along with them, such as practical situations, especially one that we talked about, which was the issue of, let's say, driving to a hospital on Shabbos in an emergency. So who does Rav Shlomo Zalman Auerbach usually paskin along with? He paskins along with Rav Moshe Isserles, who is the Ramah in the Shulchan Aruch, which is the Ashkenazi opinion. Now, if you are part of a community, let's say you're part of the Lubavitch community, you might consider what the Alter Rebbe said. In other words, you're going to look at what the Ramah said because they're Ashkenazi Jews and they're from Poland. They're going to look at it and say, yes, this is what the Ashkenazis follow. This is what we should follow. Sometimes the Alter Rebbe had a slightly different opinion. Sometimes he was makel. He was more lenient. Sometimes he was more machmir. He was more stringent. But you couldn't decide. You're not allowed to just decide if you're going to be a Lubavitcher. Today, I'm going to follow him, but I don't like what he says about that. So tomorrow I'll follow the other rabbi. You can't do that. If you're going to follow the Alter Rebbe and what he says, and if he's following along with the Moshe Isserles with the Ramah, then you have to do that all the time. You have to follow the Alter Rebbe, because that's why Chabadniks follow the Alter Rebbe also, not just Moshe Isserles and the Mechaber, in the Shulchan Aruch, Rav Yosef Karo. You can't pick and choose a rabbi. You can't say, today I'm going to follow what Rabbi Shaim told me because I like his opinion. It's more lenient. Tomorrow I'm going to follow Rabbi Morrison at Beth Emet because he's a little more lenient on that issue. Rabbi Shaim was more strict. I'm going to pick and choose. I'm going to ask Rabbi Shaim his opinion. He's going to give me an opinion. I like better the opinion by the Rabbi Yael Splansky at Holy Blossom. I'm going to follow her opinion today on that. You once you ask a rabbi their opinion, that's the opinion you're supposed to follow because you've entrusted them. You've trusted them to ask that opinion. Don't shop around until you hear the answer you want, because you might find out there's a rabbi out there that's going to tell you it's okay to eat shrimp. That maybe it's okay for them, but is your rabbi, is your community rabbi going to tell you it's okay? And this is what happens on the issues, such as driving to a hospital, which we talked about for many, many weeks. So I wanted to just show you, as we finished up last week, we know what the opinions were and what we're supposed to follow. What do we follow? We follow that if there's a threat to someone's life, forget it. You don't have to ask a non-Jew to do it. Forget about it. Do it yourself. If somebody's sick or there's an emergency, don't wait around and stand in the street and look around for a non-Jew on Shabbos or Yom Tov to drive somebody to a hospital. Idiot, get in your car, not you, an idiot, the idiot out there. Get in your car, start the car, drive the person to get to the hospital, call an ambulance, do whatever you have to do. Let's save the person, whoever that person is. I don't care if they're Jewish. I don't care if they're not Jewish. I don't care what. Shabbos should vanish and you should do the right thing. But interestingly, the Shmirat Shabbat Kehilchata, Rav Yeshaya Neuwirth, takes a very strict opinion on this. And I just thought I'd bring it up to show you how, if you're following him, and that's your Rebbe, then that's what you follow. Listen to this. He says, a Jew is not allowed to violate Shabbat in any Torah way, even if there's a threat to a limb involved, even if there's permanent loss of functionality. You can't do it. It's a Torah violation on Shabbos, period. He says, as long as we are quite sure that the patient will survive and a shinui doesn't help, even because unless we're setting aside a rabbinic violation. What he's saying is the person might lose a leg. Who cares if they lose a leg? I don't care. What is it? Shabbos? You can't break Shabbos. To me, it doesn't make sense. It's one of these things. Now, what happens in a case like this? I'm not going to go through the whole tshuva that he wrote, but he says one thing here at the end. He says this. So Rav Neuwirth says in the Shmirat Shabbat Kehilchata, which by the way, later on, in later posthumous, when after he passed away, later editions that his family put out, they changed the Shmirat Kehilchata. So somebody says to you, I learned from the Shmirat Shabbat Kehilchata, it says this. My question is, did you learn it from the first edition? Or did you learn it from the later edition, the second or the third edition? Because later there was 2 volumes, and even later there were 3 volumes. Wow, what a change from 1 volume to 3 volumes. Why all of a sudden all these leniencies? Because other rabbis stood up and said, this is ridiculous. You can't follow this. So they had to put in more lenient opinions. So here's what he adds in his tshuva.
What are you following me in here for?
Pardon?
What are you doing?
I'll mute Rose because she probably doesn't know she's on off mute. So he says, I heard from Rav Shlomo Zalman Auerbach, much of the teaching in the Shmirat Shabbat Kehilchata is based on the opinions of Rav Shlomo Zalman Auerbach. Since many poskim are on the lenient side, it is reasonable that there is room to be lenient. I like that. It's reasonable that there's room to be lenient if you cannot find a non-Jew to do the work and you are a Jewish person, go ahead and perform the Torah violation on Shabbat, but do it with a shinui. So he's saying that's where the idea of the shinui, you know what I mean? Do it with your elbow, do it with your right hand, your left, whatever it is, change the direction of how you're following and how you're doing that, just so you can continue to do it. Bottom line is, what is the Shmirat Shabbat Kehilchata saying? He's saying if someone is suffering, the way to alleviate the suffering is to perform a Torah violation and do it in an irregular way. Do it in a shinui, okay? Now that seems like nothing. Well, he's going along with it. He's just saying do it in a regular way. What? Cook the pot, use your left hand instead of your right hand. Can I ask you a question? Who cares? Who cares? My answer is, don't do it in a shinui. Forget about the shinui. Just do it. That's what I would tell. If you came to me and you asked me, what's my opinion on that? I would say, I don't care about Shabbat, goodbye, do it, finish, and that's it. Never mind the shinui, never mind trying to be fancy and do it in the left, whatever. Just do it. Pekuach nefesh, I don't care. Nobody should lose a limb. Nobody should lose an eye. Nobody should lose anything. You do say, look, if I believe in God, that's what I think God would want. That's what I hope God would want. And as a B'Tselem Elokim, that's the way I think. We can always look for the stringent opinions, but you're going to know that there are people that would follow that. They would follow. I told you about the case of the dentist. One time he drove all the way to the office to do an emergency, and he drove with his left foot. I said, idiot, you could have killed yourself. You could have killed somebody else. You could have driven through an intersection and hit a child in a buggy. Is that worth it to kill? You don't do stuff like that. Just do it. Never mind the shinui. You're helping somebody in pain. That's the right thing to do. So anyway, I wanted to just show you how different opinions come along. So after surveying all of those opinions, and this is where we're going to end up, because next time we're starting on the interesting concept of some alternative medicines, finally. And I wanted to do that today. I wanted to spend a good half hour on it today, but because the funeral I have to leave in 3 minutes. I wanted to just capsize, just to capture the concepts that we have to understand from the many weeks that we spent together in the last little idea. Here's what we learned. If a patient is in a life-threatening situation, permanent function of a limb, without permanent function to a limb, the patient is expected to live, they might not even be disabled, who cares? In this case, if a non-Jew can be asked to do whatever's necessary, all of the poskim approve of that. They all say that's perfectly fine to do that. But if a non-Jew is unavailable, many poskim allow Jews to do the rabbinic violation in an irregular way, in a shinui, right? In a shinui. Many poskim. But understand that there are many poskim that say you can do this in a regular way, in kedarko. Never mind a shinui, just do it. And bottom line is the great poskim really embrace the most lenient of these opinions. No one is going to come to you and say, "Oy, Gewalt, somebody was only going to lose a leg and you drove on Shabbos. That's a terrible." No rabbi. I can't imagine a rabbi saying. Any rabbi, the most famous rabbi, they might think it in their head, but if they said it to you, then that's ridiculous. To say to you, I can't believe that you got in the car and you didn't drive with your left foot. Well, why didn't you do something in a shinui? Why didn't you, like, to me, anytime you can do anything to make somebody more comfortable, even if they're a hypochondriac. Remember we said that even if they don't even know they're sick, you think, oh my God, it's Lucille. She has a headache every Friday night, always on a Friday night. You know what I mean? It's probably just another nothing. It's indigestion. She ate too much cholent. Doesn't matter. If she says that it's happening, it's real, because you never know. Only God knows. That could be the one and only time that you said, I'm not going to help the person. It's not real. It's the same as it was last week. And God forbid, that's the one time that it was real. So we embrace the most lenient of opinions. And this really actually is the conclusion finally of this whole topic of Shabbat. We're going to be talking next week. I'm sorry, Marion, you didn't know I have a funeral to go to. I have to leave. We're going to be leaving early now. So you're missing out in the class because you came late. Should have come 10 minutes ago, but I apologize. Anyway, so that's where we're going to leave it up. But what I want to talk about is the approach that they take in medical school, what they teach in terms of alternative medicine. Is it right? According to the poskim, is it wrong? There's a big change now in the direction of alternative medicine. It's much more appreciated by many doctors. Many doctors don't hold by it at all. They think it's a bunch of fake nonsense. They don't even consider, they don't even look at a chiropractor as being serious or real. But we're going to talk about that. Halachically, is it allowed? And not just chiropractics, and not just massage therapy, but what about Reiki? What about hands? I hear about people, they have laying hands. They do things that help somebody, make them feel better. We're going to talk about Jewishly. Can Jews do this? Is this halachic? Is it mysticism? Are we allowed it? What did they say? What did the old poskim say? What did the Rishonim say? What did the Achronim say? And what did the modern poskim say? I'll let you know straight out. It's no secret. We know we allow it. We know we allow it. But you have to understand where it comes from, why we allow it. And it's a very similar procedure to how we followed all of this to these bottom lines. Don't forget, at one time, the poskim, the Rishonim said, don't worry about the non-Jews. They don't want anything to do with us. We don't want anything to do with them. You don't have to help them. We're only going to help them because we don't want discord. We don't think that way anymore. That's how halacha is an art, not just a science, and we have to follow what they say and find a way that we can balance it in our lives today. So I'm going to say goodbye. I'm going to run to the funeral for Wasserman. He's a Baruch. All right, bye everyone. See you.
Thank you, Marshall.
Thank you.